Hola, soy Patricia Gómez. Bienvenidos. Es un gran gusto para mí el presentarles las historias que se hicieron acreedoras en el pasado abril a los reconocimientos por parte de instituciones tan distinguidas como el Milwaukee Press Club y Wisconsin Broadcasters Awards. El reportaje de Voces de la Frontera Mayday recibió por parte del Milwaukee Press Club el oro por la excelencia en periodismo en la categoría Best Long Hard Feature Story. Esta historia también fue reconocida por Wisconsin Broadcasters Awards en el tercer lugar en la categoría Best Hard News Investigative. Por otro lado, la historia de Somos Latinas recibió el primer lugar por parte de Wisconsin Broadcasters Awards en la categoría Best Use of Video y el premio plata por el Milwaukee Press Club en la categoría Best Long Soft Feature Story. Por favor, quédese con nosotros. En la marcha del 1 de mayo del 2023 de Voces de la Frontera, los manifestantes pedían que el presidente Biden usara su poder para proteger a todos los inmigrantes, que los republicanos de Wisconsin dejaran de bloquear las licencias de manejo para los inmigrantes indocumentados y que las juntas escolares adoptaran la reforma del almuerzo escolar.
Es el Día del Trabajador y es un día que se ha convertido en una tradición aquí en Wisconsin y a nivel nacional, en un día en la que marcamos en la lucha pro inmigrante y de todos los trabajadores también. Es importante elevar nuestra voz para afirmar lo que estamos luchando en este momento.
En esa mañana fría y lluviosa, cientos de estudiantes y sus familias no se dejaron amedrentar, ni por las bajas temperaturas, ni por los fuertes vientos, ni por la lluvia.
I am here because I have employees that are from Mexico, and they're good friends, and they're great employees, and they need some rights. So I'm the only person that can give them the rights.
Con estas marchas, los manifestantes demandarían que el presidente Biden usara sus poderes para proteger a todos los inmigrantes.
Yo soy un DACA Dreamer y yo estoy acá para representar lo que no pueden estar acá. Estoy acá para mis padres que lucharon tan fuerte para que puedo estudiar y que puedo estar acá, usar mi voz. También estoy acá para usar mi voz para representar a los indocumentados inmigrantes.
Que los republicanos de Wisconsin dejaran de bloquear las licencias de conducir y la matrícula estatal para los inmigrantes.
Desde hace 15 años estamos pidiendo que nos otorguen una licencia para dar seguridad a nuestras familias y poder manejar seguros dentro de la comunidad.
Venimos a marchar por ese documento que tanto nos hace falta. ¿Por qué? Porque es una identificación.
Lo vamos a ganar organizando en toda esquina del estado.
Y que las juntas escolares adoptaran la reforma del almuerzo escolar.
I am representing myself as well as the entire board of students behind me for MPS, as well as the School Lunch Task Force, which I am part of, the ACC program, LIT, and YES.
La gente no se va a ir por falta de licencias. Lo único que esto hace es crear más y más problemas. Creemos que ya llegó el tiempo, recuperemos este derecho que tuvimos por décadas.
Sabiendo que una licencia de conducir es muy importante para llevar a nuestros hijos a la escuela, para llevar a los hijos que están enfermos.
They have to drive. We can't just call a taxi. We can't call Uber where we live out in the rural areas. We have to be able to drive. Juan was driving to work one day, and he came through our little village. The police stopped him for driving too slow. But really what they wanted to do was to find out if he had a driver's license. And he didn't have a driver's license, so they gave him a ticket. And that was because he was driving too slow. And that just irritates the hell out of me.
School lunch has just really gotten atrocious. It's sad. I'm tired of the excuse, in 5 years it will get better, or when you're older yourself, you can change it. Why do I have to wait in order to make change when I can make it now? I'm clearly having an impact on all my fellow peers here as we march here today.
La mayoría de los grupos estamos luchando por lo mismo, por la licencia y porque se pare una ley 287G nos puede perjudicar a cualquiera de los que manejamos.
Este programa fue algo que exitosamente rechazamos aquí en el condado de Milwaukee, pero después lo movieron debajo de las aguas. Entonces, esto es un programa que no trae nada de seguridad, al contrario, y crea más división, legaliza el perfil racial.
Nosotros somos el cambio y nosotros merecemos ser tratados como todos acá en los Estados Unidos.
I've been to D.C. about 6 or 7 times, talking to all the congressmen, so I'm not real optimistic. Somebody has to step up and say something about it, and so that's what I'm doing.
El presidente Biden puede acabar con este programa. Él corrió con la promesa que iba a abolir esto. Eso es lo que queremos. Pero también es algo que a nivel local se puede cambiar porque es un programa voluntario que han entrado los alguaciles en este tipo de programa.
Las policías están actuando como el ICE, como los de inmigración, y llevarnos a las cárceles para que ahí seamos deportados, o sea, deportada la gente que es parada.
How am I supposed to get my education when I can't even be on a full stomach? And as someone who doesn't go home early enough, or I get home to the school late due to me doing other stuff and other programs, I sometimes am hungry. Of course I'm going to be hungry. And the school lunch is not enough for me as a person, as well as like the rights of some of my fellow immigrants, because like I understand the struggle of not being from here and having the difficulties of getting like a driver's license or a passport or being able to like advocate for yourself because you're treated as an alien, which is so wrong on so many levels. I just can't believe that we as people are allowing that to stand. So I'm fighting for driver's license for all as well as a better lunch for all.
A los jóvenes han sido una tremenda inspiración para personas que han estado en la lucha por décadas y a lo mejor se están sintiendo un poco cansados y decepcionados. Ver esa fuerza y energía es la leña al fuego porque vamos a seguir en la lucha.
Pues la esperanza la tenemos desde hace 15 años, que este año se nos otorgue la licencia de conducir para millones de indocumentados.
Ponse en mi posición, ponse como que si ustedes también fueron indocumentados inmigrantes, porque ustedes no saben la dificultad que nosotros sufrimos.
Los niños sufren mucho cuando vamos a dejarlos a la escuela. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos voltean y dicen, papá, mamá, ahí viene la policía, con cuidado, ten cuidado, dicen. La verdad, necesitamos una licencia para todos.
What I try to tell people, I give a lot of talks on this, and what I tell people is get to know an immigrant by their first name. If you can get to know an immigrant by your first name, then your fears will go away. And try to make an attempt to do that. And as soon as you get to know somebody like Roberto or Juan or Anastasio or Severo, your fears will go away and you'll be amazed at how wonderful people they are.
Por favor, si ustedes tienen un voz, úsalo porque una persona puede hacer un gran cambio y eso it means a lot to me, sabiendo que otros están acá luchando por mis derechos y por los derechos de otros.
Es importante que como movimiento seguimos presionando al gobierno y rechazando los que se están usando eso como una plataforma de odio en su campaña política para asegurar que somos un país donde realmente se respeta los derechos humanos y damos las gracias a gente que viene con su talento, sus esperanzas para ayudar a levantar a este país.
Somos Latinas es una historia basada en el libro Somos Latinas, Voices of Wisconsin Latina Activists. El libro es parte de un proyecto al que usted puede accesar en la Sociedad Histórica de Wisconsin. Nosotros enfocamos la historia en la publicación del libro y en los testimonios de algunas de las participantes. Mujeres latinas de Wisconsin que nos cuentan sobre sus esfuerzos que ayudaron a romper barreras y a construir una comunidad mejor, esta en la que vivimos hoy.
Latinas is a project which focuses on the state's unsung heroes, meaning our women over the age of 50. The Somos Latina Digital History Project was started in 2012 at the request of Linda Garcia Merchant from the National Oral History Project known as Chicanas por mi Raza.
You know, I was fortunate enough to serve on the Somos Latinas Advisory Committee. Tess had invited me to join the group, and I really was fascinated by this notion of collecting the stories of older Latina community activists, so I joined immediately.
Linda Garcia Merchant asked me to consider interviewing a woman, and I said, there's more than a woman in Wisconsin who's been a Latina activist. So for 4 years, from 2012 till June of 2015, my students in Chicano Studies did video interviews. And that's now online through the Wisconsin Historical Society. In June of 2015, I retired, and Eloise and I had already agreed that we would work on a book. And since the book was launched in May of 18, we've had requests for presentations and speaking engagements, universities, nonprofits, and small groups of women. And it's really been wonderful because we've been able to gather even more insight and stories as we meet other women across the state.
This program today and the series of programs that are going to follow over the next few years as stepping stones to help us get there, to show that this university is committed not just to Latinx students that we are recruiting to our campus, but to the larger Latinx community of Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin.
The Wisconsin Historical Society has been a partner and a supporter since the very first day. And in fact, the videos produced are the first project they put online. That means that community, faculty, K-12 teachers can access the videos for free, use them in a learning environment.
Somewhere down the road, I think when most of the video interviews had been completed, that Tess and I were talking, and we said, you know, we really have to create greater awareness now that we've got these wonderful collection of video interviews. How do we do that? So we were doing some brainstorming, and finally we said, you know what, let's write a book.
We're here at Marquette, and I don't envision it slowing down for a bit. I'd say another year and a half of people wanting to hear more from our women in the book and the video series.
Marquette is at an interesting opportunity right now to really grow not only its Hispanic serving institution status, in other words, to grow our student population to 25% Latinx students, but also to grow our Latinx Studies program, an opportunity for students to understand that their culture, their history, their memories are part of the larger stories we tell about Wisconsin and about the United States. The book Somos Latinas is a perfect encapsulation of that.
It took about 144 people between community and campus to produce the Digital History Project. And that meant we had over 70 students from my Chicanx, Latinx study courses from 2012 to 2015 who were engaged in producing the videos. And I'm tremendously proud of what they produced.
Then when we decided to do that, we felt that we needed to further explore what was community activism from the lens of the Latinas themselves. There are so many definitions of what community activism is, but we really needed to hear it from their own perspective of what that meant. We wanted to explore that further, and so the book tries to accomplish that.
Latinx studies and Latinx history is American history, and that it's important for all of our students, whether they are of Latinx descent or otherwise, to understand that this history is part of the history they need to understand who they are as part of the communities they're a part of, and to understand the neighbors that call these places home as well. And most importantly, understand that it's their obligation to take that work outside of the classroom and into the broader Marquette community.
In a total, we have 43 women profiled through the Digital History Project. And in addition, we were able to collect archives for some of the women.
And that is, for Tess and myself, one of the reasons why we wrote the book, because we had our own personal experiences in the Milwaukee community and realizing that we had changed things up. And so it continues to be the case, but women still have to find the path for leadership and create that path, because it's not always created for us. So that was really one reason for me to be involved in this effort.
It's wonderful that the audience now is able to point to specific women in our communities. And I've been very clear from the beginning that Somos Latinas is the starting point of the important recovery and documentation of Latinx history in this state.
And so we're really proud of everyone's effort. You know, Tess and I are in our latter phase of life as well, and so we rightfully ended the book with saying, hacia adelante, so onward, forward, and we really see others, you know, continuing to take on the good work of collecting and archiving the stories of women.
And there are phenomenal women and men and elders whose stories are not part of much Latino history, much less Wisconsin history.
Growing up around my mother, who was one of the founders of United Migrant Opportunity Services.
I was pretty young. I worked for the Latin American Union for Civil Rights.
That is strong. I mean, I would label myself more of an educator than an activist.
Well, I'd have to be my mother. She was one of the first women to speak English, to read and write in both languages, to drive a car.
I would define an activist someone who has the heart to want to be part of the community, to want to make changes, and don't ask for a penny for it.
We left Cuba in 1965. We actually left 6 years after the revolution. At that point, there was a strong Soviet influence, so that's when my father said, we're leaving. At that point, the freedom flights from Cuba to Miami had been suspended. So we ended up going through Spain, waiting in Spain to be able to enter the United States and get our visa. So once we came to the United States, we went to live on the U.S. Naval Base on Cuba.
This story, as I'm sure you are aware, is not my whole life story. I have pieces of my life in the book. One piece in particular that I'm real proud of was my involvement in the union, the labor movement.
The part that I would like to share with you today was actually when I was Maria Flores. At that time, in 1982, a new Senate district had been carved out of the south side of Milwaukee.
The piece I'm going to focus in is on the establishing of the Latinas en Acción. So back in around 2000, I joined the Women's Fund of Greater Milwaukee. And a couple of years into working with them, Cecilia Vallejos and I decided that we wanted to create our own fund.
It was important for us to be able to elect an Hispanic candidate, and there was an opportunity presented after the 1990 census.
Why the women did what they did, what they were, and how that affected their lives. Motivation, role models, what risks were involved in taking on the community building efforts.
No one had ever run for a Senate seat, a Latino, ever. A group of us got together and we discussed the matter, and we concurred that a Latino needed to vote for that seat. Much to my surprise, my friends turned to me and said, "You ought to be the one."
I felt it was the time that we needed to increase Latino representation. I decided that we needed to get together and we needed to show our strength, and in doing so, we needed to become educated about the redistricting process, which went on at 3 different levels: at the city, at the state, and at the county.
I grew up mostly in the Virgin Islands. I spent my teen years living there, and then I wanted to go to school in the States. I wanted to see what the United States was like, so I applied for a high school, a boarding school in Massachusetts. I spent time in Massachusetts working as a teacher for a center for pregnant and parenting teens. As a teacher, they called me maestra, which was a significant title for me, and I never realized how powerful it was and how creative I could be in that job.
I did many things, including march with Cesar Chavez. I got our county's executive to issue a proclamation in support of grape boycott, which was going on at that time.
And we had worked on social issues and women organizing around different issues. We've been able to raise approximately $70,000, and we've gifted over half of that to small projects directed at young girls and women.
Perhaps they chose me because I was at that time a Latina with educational credentials. We believed that this type of candidate would appeal to an overall community, overall voters in that region.
From Massachusetts, I ended up accepting a position in Wisconsin as director for Centro Hispano at a time when the Latino community was exploding. And people didn't really understand this explosion, didn't understand where people were coming from, didn't understand their journey and their challenges. So I spent a lot of time in that role trying to educate government officials, school districts, etc., about what Latino immigrants were facing in coming to Wisconsin.
We reached out to the African American community and we shared with them what our plan was, and they shared with us what they had. So we had to make sure that we weren't in opposition, and we reached a consensus to support each other's position, so we provided a united front.
I still continue as much as I can. Even though there was no union there, I have always believed that unionism is not just the rank and file. Unionism is the whole community as a whole. All the working people, we are all a union.
So our campaign was a quick campaign. We did not win, but most importantly, the coming together of these men and women in this campaign energized and indeed coalesced the Latino vote in the South Side.
One of the most powerful moments in 2006 in Madison was the immigration rally in support of immigrants. And there were busloads coming from all over Wisconsin. It was powerful to feel that energy, and it was great to receive just incredible support from everybody about being an immigrant.
You know, why I think that's as important is really about, letting other people know, letting the community know who we are, what our value is as Latinas, and that we have that value.
I feel honored that I've been a conduit, and I don't see me more than anything but a conduit. It's their voice, their stories. I just give it a channel to be funneled into. I don't use the word empower. I don't empower anyone. They've had it all along, and they've used it, but institutions haven't listened to them. And so I see that in some way we open a channel for these voices that have been speaking for many years, decades, about things that need to be corrected. And they've achieved great things.
And I think that we really have contributed to the larger understanding of what community building is.
So the feeling is, the audience now knows who they are.
Y con un hasta pronto nos despedimos, invitándolos a que nos dejen saber sus comentarios por el teléfono 414-297-7544, a que nos visiten en nuestro sitio del internet en milwaukeepbs.org y en las redes sociales. Soy Patricia Gómez, deseándoles paz y bendiciones.